Hi everyone, I'm Mark Branham, professor at San Jose City College. In this session, I'll walk you through how I use generative AI tools to streamline the process of creating and updating course materials with practical, real-world examples you can apply right away. Over time, I found that different AI tools have different strengths, and by combining them strategically, we can create better course content more efficiently. I follow a four-phase workflow. First, content creation and updating old material. Second, generating visual concepts. Third, creating graphics. And finally, refining everything for polish and clarity. This approach has been especially helpful as I update my course materials with the latest technologies and trends. Here's a concrete example of how I've used generative AI to improve my course content. On the left, you'll see my original unit on web accessibility from my Introduction to Web Development class. On the right, you can see the updated, modernized version. Cleaner, more structured, and more aligned with current best practices. Using AI helped me clarify the language, restructure the learning objectives, and bring the unit up to date. Here's how I get started. I copy in some of my existing lecture notes, in this case from earlier HTML and accessibility units, and ask Claude to help generate a draft outline for a new version. I often include references to where related content shows up elsewhere in the course, so the AI can help keep things connected. I am often surprised how well the AI tools structure the flow, and I can instantly spot places to refine and personalize. You'll see the full Claude chat link on screen if you'd like to explore the full conversation later. Claude excels at generating clear, beginner-friendly instructional content. What it produced here was impressively detailed, and it even followed my preferred tone and style. I guided the structure and emphasis, like referencing mobile accessibility and using my older restaurant-themed examples. The result felt like a well-aligned teaching draft I could immediately build on. Claude's first draft gave me a solid base I could refine and expand with my own voice. The human component is still critical. AI can generate solid instructional drafts, but it's our subject matter expertise that ensures accuracy and currency. For example, here I noticed Claude was using the name attribute for anchors, which is outdated. I stepped in, and Claude adapted immediately to reflect current best practices. This back and forth is part of how I guide AI to meet my standards. Here, I continued refining the material, adding analogies, lived experience, and the kinds of framing I know work well with my students. AI gave me a strong draft, but this is where my role as a teacher comes in, shaping the content to connect, include, and resonate. These accessibility examples aren't just technical, they're human, and I want my students to understand that. Next, I asked Claude to suggest visual elements that could help students better understand the progression from HTML to CSS to JavaScript. I prompted it with, what visual elements or diagrams would help communicate this concept? Claude suggested a layered cake analogy, with HTML as the foundation, CSS in the middle, and JavaScript as the top layer, and even offered to generate an SVG diagram to match. I love this kind of creative thinking because it mirrors how I often explain web layers in class. The image on the left is the original that Claude created. It was nearly perfect, but needed a few adjustments to match my exact vision. Since Claude generated it as an SVG, I was able to go into the code, make precise edits, and create the polished version you see on the right. This is a great example of how generative AI gives us a powerful starting point, but it's our input and refinement that brings the final product to life. For more visually rich or artistic concepts, I often turn to ChatGPT. After developing the content with Claude, I passed it into ChatGPT and asked for ideas to help students visually understand the WCAG accessibility guidelines. It came back with 3 great options, and I ended up choosing the third, a friendly infographic based on the POUR principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. The image on the left is what ChatGPT generated based on the POUR principles. It was conceptually strong and visually appealing, but there were a few visual and textual issues, like misspelled labels and inconsistent icon placement. I brought it into Photoshop, cleaned it up, and added finishing touches to produce the more polished version on the right. It's now more accurate, more readable, and more student-ready. This is a great example of using AI as a design assistant, not a designer, and shows how small edits can transform a good image into a great one. So at this point, you might be wondering, which AI tool should I use for what? Here's a quick comparison of the large language models I used. Claude is excellent for structured educational content and explanation, perfect for drafting lessons or unpacking complex ideas. ChatGPT shines in visual creativity and prototyping, especially when you need diagrams or quick solutions. And Gemini can be helpful when you're working in the Google ecosystem or need search-based research or data analysis. Each tool has its own strengths, and I often switch between them depending on what I need. There are also some fantastic specialized tools that go beyond text. If you're doing any coding, GitHub Copilot integrates right into your IDE and acts like an AI pair programmer. For visuals, Midjourney produces stunning artistic images, great for storyboards or conceptual visuals. And if you're creating instructional videos, Runway makes it easy to generate motion graphics and short clips. These tools let you go deeper and add polish to your final materials. So whether you're building slides, websites, videos, or full lessons, there's likely an AI tool that can help. You just need to pick the right one for the task. To wrap up, here are a few final workflow tips. First, mixed approach. Combine tools for optimal results. For example, I use Claude for content and ChatGPT for visuals. Second, the iterative process. I use the output from one AI as input for another. Third, verification. Always review and verify AI-generated content for accuracy and desired outcome. Fourth, refinement. Use AI tools for initial drafts, then refine with your expertise. I often find I need to use non-AI tools like Photoshop to fix the work. I often say that AI saves me 80% of my time, but that still means I need to put in that extra 20%. And finally, customization. Adapt AI outputs to match your specific teaching style and student needs. By combining tools like Claude and ChatGPT, I've been able to update my curriculum faster and honestly make it better. The key is understanding which tool to use for which task. This kind of back and forth between AI tools, what my colleague Scott calls the ping-pong nature of chatbots, has really transformed how I work. I encourage you to try out this approach for your own teaching materials. Start small, experiment with updating something you've already created. You might be surprised at how effective this ping-pong method can be. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the creation of these materials. This presentation was authored by me, Professor Mark Branham, at San Jose City College, with assistance from Claude, an AI tool developed by Anthropic, and ChatGPT, developed by OpenAI. The images you've seen were generated using DALL-E, another tool from OpenAI. I've chosen to be transparent about my AI use because I believe it models the kind of ethical practice we should encourage in academia. Just as we ask students to cite their sources, I think we should also be open about AI assistance. It doesn't take away from the human judgment or expertise behind this work. If anything, it reinforces it. This presentation is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 license. You're free to share, adapt, and reuse it, as long as you provide appropriate credit. I hope these examples give you some inspiration to explore generative AI in your own teaching, and I'd love to hear how you adapt these ideas to your own discipline. Thanks again for watching, and feel free to reach out if you'd like help getting started or want to share your own experiments.